Hey Algebra 1, here are your notes for 10.3, day 2, where we're going to learn how to solve by completing the square. Now yes, we did this in the last video, however we're going to take it up just one notch today. Since very few quadratic expressions are actually perfect squares, where they turn out nice on the left side when we factor them, we have a method of completing the square, which can be used to solve quadratic equations that can't initially be factored. So let's go through the process of making the perfect square. This is what I hinted about yesterday. So what does C have to equal in order to factor into a perfect square? Well, I know that no number out in front means that when I end up factoring this, it's going to be in the form x and x. And whatever number goes in this blank must be the exact same. Now, even trickier, I know that whatever number is here has to add to b. That's what we saw yesterday, and that's what we know about factoring normally. So what one number, when added to itself, adds to 4? Well, I know that the number 2, when added to itself, adds to 4, and I can make that negative by making it a negative 2. So now, to get those numbers to add to 4, but to multiply to c, all I have to do is say whatever number is here and whatever number is here, which are the same number coincidentally, need to multiply to make c. So if I have a 2 here and a 2 here, even if they're negative or positive, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to make them negative here. When those are both negative 2, they add to negative 4, but they multiply to a positive 4. So in this case, c has to equal positive 4. Let's see that again with another one. I have x squared plus 10x plus c. When I throw it into my parentheses, I'm going to have x, and now I need to figure out what number, when added to itself, adds to 10. Well, 10 divided by 2, to split it down the middle, is 5. So 5 and 5, when I add them together, makes a positive 10. To get to that c, I need to multiply these numbers. So in this case, c is 25. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern. Try the last one on your own real quick. Pause the video, see if you can figure out what c ends up being, and then come back and check it out. Alright, hopefully you paused the video, and when you did, you noticed that when you break this down, 16 broken down by 2, what number adds to negative 16, is going to be 8 and 8. In this case, they're going to be negative. So when we multiply these two numbers, we're going to have c equals 64. Now notice, this one had negatives inside, this one had positive, and this one had negatives. But all of our c's ended up being what sign? You should notice that they all ended up being positive. And that's because as long as your signs are the same, and they should be, as long as your signs are the same, they're always going to multiply to a positive. So maybe you noticed it, maybe you didn't. If you didn't, here's the trick. To find out what to make c in order for it to be a perfect square trinomial, we're going to take b, divide it by 2, and then we're going to multiply it by itself, which is the exact same as squaring it. So this is how we find c. So let's use that trick. Let's see if that works here. What we're going to do is we're going to rearrange the equation to make it look a little bit nicer for us. So right now, that 3 isn't doing it for me. I know that if I want this to be a perfect square trinomial, I have to move that 3 away and replace it with something better. So what I'm going to do is I am going to move that 3. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to move it to the other side. I'm going to subtract it over. And where it was, I'm just going to leave a space bar. Just a placeholder for right now. When I move it over, I get 7. However, I'm going to put a number here to make this a perfect square trinomial. In fact, let's figure out what number I'm going to put there based on my trick. 6, I put in for b, divided by 2 is 3. 3 becomes 9 when I square it. So I'm going to put a positive, because all of my c's are going to be positive, 9. Now you're really confused right now. I know that. I totally get it. but bear with me. You'll see why this is so cool in a minute. You remember how I've always said whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other? That will never go away in math. So whatever you did to the left side, you also have to balance it out. That's the completing part of completing the square. Now, why did we do all of that? Why did we move the 3 and add 9? It seems like a lot of work, right? Well, here's the thing. By doing that, we now have created a perfect square trinomial on the left-hand side. I can say x plus 3 times x plus 3 is the left side, and I can say that the right side is 16, just by simplifying and factoring. Well, once we're at this step, you should recognize it from yesterday's lesson as being able to be rewritten as x plus 3 squared equals 16. Now when we have something squared, we can undo that square and get whatever is being squared by itself by just taking the square root. Then of course balancing it out on both sides. The square root and the square cancel each other out, so I'm left with x plus 3 equals 4. What am I missing though? When we take the square root, we always have to make sure we put a plus or minus sign. Don't forget that. That is what gives us our two answers. If you're doing these problems and you're only getting one answer, you're probably missing this plus or minus sign. All right, break it down into the two pieces. X plus 3 equals positive 4, x plus 3 equals negative 4. All right, x equals 1, x equals negative 7. Awesome. If after that one example you're like, you know what, Miss Burry, I'm ready for the challenge, go ahead and try that second one on your own. Pause the video here and then come on back. If you're not feeling so confident yet, hey, absolutely no worries. Let's go through another one together and then I'll let you try number 3 on your own. Again, this one, this 3, it isn't working for me. I don't like it. It's not a perfect square trinomial on the left side. So I'm going to start this problem by moving the 3. However, when I move the 3, it leaves a space on the left-hand side. I moved it away, and now I've got this space that I have to fill. But I also have a space on the other side because I know that when I fill the space on the left, I'll need to balance it out on the right. Now, let's use our trick from before to figure out what goes in the C position. Well, negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. So I know a positive 4 goes in this position in order to make the left side a perfect square trinomial. But be careful, whatever you do to one side, you should balance it out on the other. All right, perfect square trinomial can be broken down. We've got negative 2 and negative 2 equals positive 1. Notice to be very careful for your signs here. If it's a negative here, it's got to be negative in both of those. That's one of the factoring rules we learned. All right, take it one more step. B minus 2 squared equals 1. Take the square root of both sides, and we're left with b minus 2 equals plus or minus. Now, what is the square root of 1? Well, lucky for us, it's just 1. Let's keep going then. Move into our two solutions. B minus 2 equals positive 1, b minus 2 equals negative 1, and our final solutions here are positive 3 and positive 1. Fabulous. And I know because there's probably some of my students out there who are bothered by the fact that I am not circling my answers. There they are. All right. Hopefully, if you tried that on your own and came back to see it, you were right. If not, totally okay. I understand that this takes practice and it takes a lot of effort. That is okay. If you didn't try number 2 on your own, I would like you to pause the video now and try number 3 on your own. Notice that it is not in our standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So before you get to working on that completing the square method we just learned, you should probably put it in standard form first. All right, go ahead and try it and then unpause the video when you're done. All right, hopefully you paused the video long enough to give that one a try. Like I said before I paused it, I do want to put this in standard form first, meaning I want to get everything on one side so that it's all equal to a number. That way I can follow the same steps that I did in my previous problems. And I'm going to use the steps from my previous problems in order to help me with this one. So, as I'm looking at this, I see that this one really isn't working for me. And I can tell that right away because that's a negative number. We don't like a negative number in C. Remember, according to our trick, when you square any number, it becomes positive. So C has to be positive. And in this case, it isn't. So let's just start by moving that 1 to the other side. We've got p squared minus 2p spacebar, because I moved it, there's a hole, there's a gap, positive 1 and spacebar. Now I take my b, negative 2 divided by 2 according to my trick is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is a positive 1. Notice it's a little difference, but it makes a huge adjustment to our problem because if you just leave it negative, you're going to have some issues. All right, let's factor this left side now. We've got a p and a p, 1, 1, negative, negative. And it equals positive 2. All right, rewrite it as a square. Take the square root of both sides. You get plus or minus root 2. And we finish it up. I'm actually going to skip this step in this problem. So this is the step I'm skipping, and I'm going right down here. So I know that p equals positive 1 plus root 2. And I know that p equals positive 1 minus root 2. So those are my two final answers. All right, now I know that a lot of you are step people, so I definitely want to show you the steps behind this. Let me move this so I can type. There we go. So let's start by listing the steps. What have I been starting out with? Well, if you look at my previous problems, I always move one number away, and so I'm essentially creating a blank. So create your blank for C. And that C is the third number in our equation. Once we've done that, we complete the square. We figure out what goes into C. Complete the square by using, I'm even going to give you a little extra, by using b over 2 squared. Once you've got that taken care of, you're going to square root both sides. Remember, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. And then once we've taken that square root, as we've done here, we're just going to simplify and solve. So simplify and solve. Not too tricky, but it can be a lot, and you have to be careful to follow your steps. So my biggest suggestion as usual is look at the steps from your previous problem. If you're really stuck on a problem, see how the others started and how they continued. Your biggest asset is your own work. All right, let's flip it over and see what else we've got. We have 3 more problems, which I would like you to try on your own and then come on back. If you're feeling confident at this point with completing the square, you can go ahead and start on your homework. However, I am going to do all 3 of these problems completely so that you have enough examples to look at in case you want to watch more. All right, hopefully you paused the video just now and tried these on your own. We're going to start working through them. So, using my steps from before, I start by creating a blank. The nice one about this is my number is already on the other side. So all I have to do to create my blank is to just put one in. There's no number over there to move, so I just ignore it. What number would go nicely in C? I use my trick and say 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared is positive 16. Positive 16 on one side means positive 16 on the other. Now, why did I do this? Remember, it's because in doing so, we've created a perfect square trinomial. And that perfect square trinomial can be broken up into x, 4, 4, plus, plus. What multiplies to 16 adds to 8? 4 will do it. And then, of course, we simplify our right side. Let's now rewrite this left side as a perfect square. Take the square root of both sides to be left with x plus 4 equals plus or minus 6. I'm going to skip the step that usually goes in here where I break it down into two problems. You can go ahead and show that step if you'd like. But I'm going to go directly to x equals, when I move this over, you've got negative 4 plus 6, which is positive 2. And when you move it over for the negative, you've got negative 4 minus 6, which is negative 10. All right, second example. That 9 isn't working for me, so I'm going to move it over and create my blank. Y squared minus 8y, create your blank. 9 moves over, create your blank. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is positive 16. Positive 16 on both sides. And keep going. Perfect square trinomial. Y is negative 4, 25. Rewrite as perfect square. Oh, I forgot my square there. Oops. Take the square root of both sides. Plus or minus positive. There we go. And solve into your two solutions. When I move that y over, I'm going to have 4 plus 5, which is 9. And I'm going to have 4 minus 5, which is negative 1. And per usual, I have forgotten to circle my answers. So there they are. And, excuse me, last one. This one already has a number on the right side, but don't let that stop you. The method remains the same. We're still going to move our 11 over and create our space like we've done before. M squared plus 20m space equals, when I minus that over, it's negative 19. And I just keep that space. Even when the problems look a little different, we still follow the same steps. We may just have to rewrite the first equation to help ourselves see that these are the steps we take. All right, 20 divided by 2 is 10. 10 times 10 is positive 100. That's a really big number in a really small space. There we go. All right, I'm going to skip a step, see if you can follow me. M plus 10 squared equals, now I'm going to have to think, 81? Yeah, positive 81. I skipped this step in case you were paying attention. I didn't write it out as the two pieces. I went directly to this. Once you get good, you can go ahead and take that step too. But if you're not ready to take it now, I totally understand. Include that step in your work to help you. All right, once we get here, we're going to take the square root of both sides. We get positive or negative 9. Break it down into your two solutions, and you get m equals negative 10 plus 9 is negative 1. Negative 10 minus 9 is negative 19. And there are your two answers. All right, I know completing the square can be really tricky and time consuming, so make sure you're being really careful, checking your steps, and then double checking your work. Let me know if you have any questions.